All right, welcome. It's good to have you all here today, and we'll continue with our conversation about how to access God and spirituality and non duality. I know that when we talk about this, there's a lot of misunderstanding, there's a lot of fuzziness sometimes, there's a lot of haziness. People aren't really clear about what it means when we talk about God and spirituality and how to access that, how to actualize authentic spirituality. And as a result, some people argue that there is really no God to actualize, no spirituality to actualize. But that is just a reflection of their own deficit or deficiency in consciousness, right? Because spiritual actualization actually has to do with an ever increasing spiritual consciousness, right? So you have to have an increasing level of spiritual consciousness. And that's what it's all about. And a person who's contracting spiritually, contracting in every way, is going to tell you there is no God and there's nothing to actualize because they themselves haven't actualized. Why would they support your pursuit of something greater and something grander and something more sublime? The question has been asked, is it the case that there is no God? And we talked about some of the justifications, some of the reasons and arguments and rationalizations that people put forward to deny the existence of God. We have seen some of them make sense to a greater or lesser degree, but some of the argument doesn't really make sense. Today, I like to focus on the mountain of evidence that exists that are in support of God. I think in the last session, I offered you four of those evidence that I talked about, and I like to look at them one by one. The first mountain of evidence that supports the existence of God is really nature. Even if you had no evangelist, you had no preacher, you had no guru, you had no yogi, no holy man come talk to you about God, you can look at nature and see God in nature. The witness of nature is a powerful one. In his writings, the Apostle Paul, in his writing to the Romans, grounds his argument in nature. He did not automatically go to Scripture. He goes directly to nature in Romans chapter 1. He uses a mix of argument from design and cosmology and causation, or what you call cause and effect, to make a case for the existence of God. And so we can literally reduce Paul's argument into Aristotelian syllogism, and it will go something like this. Paul would say that anything that begins to exist was created. The world exists, he would argue, therefore the world was created. This is a perfect argument. Anything that begins to exist was created. The world or the created order exists, therefore the world was created. And Paul would argue that God was the creator behind the created order. If I see a really beautiful Rolex wristwatch, this is not a Rolex wristwatch, this is just a G-Shock. But if I see a beautiful Rolex wristwatch, not that I would know one, I never seen one in my life, I would not assume that that wristwatch just came about. I would know there's some designers, I would know there's some engineers perhaps, some wristwatch makers, wherever Rolex is, designed it. It's as simple as that. There was a time people came together and said, we're going to make a wristwatch. We're going to call it Rolex. And they put their heads together and they designed it. This is the argument that Paul was making here. Paul notes here that the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all of the ungodliness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power, and His divine nature have been clearly seen and being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. What is Paul talking about here? The Apostle Paul is saying that even if there was no preacher to preach to you, you didn't have a Bible to read, you never encountered a sadhu or a guru or a yogi, you've never been to India, you've never been to Mecca, you've never been to Jerusalem, you've never been anywhere at all. He said you can still look at nature and come to the conclusion that there is a God. Because in and through nature, you can see God's divine nature. You can see His tremendous power. You can see His creative abilities. This is the argument that Paul is making here. That's the argument he's saying here. I know, I don't know about you, but I know of myself. I know that each time I'm closer to nature, I can feel something about God. Just recently, I was in Brazil, for example, and one of the places that I was offered to stay was really a presidential penthouse, right smack in the city of Salvador, at the topmost level of this high rise, overlooking all of the other beautiful buildings and beautiful sites in Salvador. It's a place that most people will die to go stay in. Beautiful unit, just anything you can ever want, what was there. And after the guy showed it to me, I wasn't excited about it. I was thankful that they offered me this beautiful place to stay, but that wasn't really what I wanted. And later on, I called him. I said, listen, I don't think I'm going to stay there. Because what my heart was wanting to do was to go stay someplace closer to nature. And I went on and I got a different place, away from the city, right smack in the Brazilian jungles. My neighbors and friends were the birdies and the squirrels and the hawks and the iguanas, right? And the trees and the bananas and the mangoes and the just that nature surrounded me, right? And it was just one room, right? And one room with a living room, and then there is the upstairs part of it, but it's just a small, simple unit and a balcony. I would sit down there and listen to the birds sing. I was close to nature, and something about that spoke to me about God. Every morning, the birdies will line up, in front of my house on the tree, and they would sing, and I loved it. I felt good, right? And each time I would go stay maybe in a cabin by the ocean and listen to the waves and listen to the crashing of the water by the seashores, I sensed something about God who created it all. He is the supreme intelligence that is behind all things. And this is essentially the argument that Paul was making here. That even though you have never met somebody, a pastor, an evangelist, a prophet, a teacher, whatever, you still have no excuse. Because you can look at creation and come to no other conclusion that somebody created this. There has to be a creator. I mean, it's like if I woke up one day, walk outside my door and see like a BMW X7 or X8, or maybe a Mercedes-Benz S-Series, or maybe one of these cars that Elon Musk makes, Tesla Model X SUV, packed right there in front of my house. I'm not going to just assume, oh, look at that. That just randomly appeared. I can't say that. I would know that somebody, for one thing, somebody drove the car and packed it nicely there by my street corner. I would know that. More importantly, I would know that a team of designers and engineers sat down someday and decided, let's design a car that looks like this, and we're going to call it XYZ. And they called it Tesla X model. They called it BMW X6. Or they called it Mercedes-Benz AMG, whatever. I would know that. I would not automatically assume that, oh, this stuff just fell out of the sky and it just randomly happened. That would be foolishness. And this is the argument from design. And Paul is making this argument that you could not say that there is no God. You already have His works testifying to it. The earth itself gives voice to the power that is behind it. All of creation gives voice to the fact that the Creator has done His work well. You look at a beautiful stem of rose. Some of the Indian mystics and some of the Eastern mystics say they can see all of the world in one single petal of rose. Not to talk about the whole bush of rose and the whole of creation. You can see God there. Okay, that's it for now. Please put down your thoughts, your opinions, and your questions in the comment sections below. Until next time, like, share, subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell for me. Thank you so much.